Hello, my name is Ankita, and today we are going to build and deploy a complete AI business that represents the massive shift we've seen in 2026. You've probably heard of OpenClaw. It's a framework that redefined how autonomous agents actually work. So in this video, we are building using the exact architecture that OpenClaw uses. We'll be building a high-revenue, autonomous AI SaaS called as Exec OS. We are moving past the era of building everything from scratch and transitioning to using MCP and skills. So that's exactly what we'll be doing today. Being a senior developer is all about architecture and orchestration. So Exec OS is an autonomous executive that runs on a 15-minute heartbeat. It triages your inbox by ghostwriting your email drafts and meeting follow-ups, by detecting when a calendar event needs to be scheduled and drafting the next steps before you even ask. To build this, we are going to use a 2026 bleeding tech stack. We'll be mastering Next.js 16 alongside React 19, leveraging server and client components, server actions, API routes. For the brain of Exec OS, we will be using Anthropic's latest Claude models via the Versal AI SDK to power the agent's reasoning. We'll be using Google APIs as our agent tools to interact directly with Gmail and Google Calendar, so our AI agent can run autonomously in your system. For the UI, we will be using Tailwind CSS for professional responsive design and Shadcn UI component library to build a modern dashboard that visualizes agent reasoning in real time. We are going to use Clerk for robust authentication and crucially Clerk billing to manage subscriptions, trials, usage-based gates, so turning your agentic logic into a recurring revenue engine. Our entire data layer is going to be powered by Drizzle ORM with Postgres database, which is the world's most advanced relational database, allowing us to scale our agent's memory infinitely. We will be deploying this on Versal, letting us ship scalable apps faster. Now, whether you want to build a side hustle or a full-scale AI agency, this video is your blueprint for 2026 development. All of this is going to cost you $0 for your tech stack because all the services that we will be using are completely for free. However, to provide agentic reasoning, you are going to need Claude API tokens. Now, if you don't have an existing Anthropic subscription, don't worry. Check this video out on my channel. I'll show you exactly how to use open source models to power this specific application. Now, to help you follow along, you can download a cheat sheet along with the GitHub source code completely for free. But commits are exactly split by the features we are building. So stop building AI wrappers and start training agents. So let's dive in.
We are going to build Exec OS, your autonomous executive assistant. And you may have heard of OpenClaw, the AI that actually does things. That's exactly what Exec OS is also going to do. Now keep this in mind, OpenClaw is really powerful and it not only integrates with Gmail and Google Calendar, but it also has the ability to integrate with a lot of different services. But the architecture and the fundamentals and basics that we are going to use in this specific video, you're going to learn how actually OpenClaw works as well. What Exec OS does is that it is truly your autonomous executive assistant. It clears your inbox, sends emails, manages your calendar, creates some tasks for you, all within your dashboard. You don't have to worry about guiding it at all. Once you integrate the services, you're pretty much good to go. This is the beautiful landing page of Exec OS. We are going to be using Clerk for subscriptions. We have a free plan which allows limited agents and manually running agents. And again, that pushes folks to subscribe to the Pro plan, which means we are going to spin up unlimited agents as well as run them automatically. For that, we are going to use the cron jobs from Versal to do so as well. At the same time, if the user has subscribed, that means they have logged in. Let's just go ahead and log in here. This is my Pro plan account. Once we log in, you can already see I'm already a Pro user over here. Now, we take them through this basic onboarding where you can connect through Gmail, Google Calendar, and they can subscribe to activate the agent. Now, they need to subscribe to the Pro plan, otherwise they won't be able to have this autonomous behavior that we all love. As you can see, the agent just ran and status is success, but there were no necessary emails to process or nothing for the agent to do really. But as you can see, we could also just run that agent manually or have it run autonomously. When you go to monitoring, you can see exactly what the agent has processed. For example, you can see action items for review. When you expand it, you can see this is the drafted reply, calls to discuss. These are the different action items created. and what are the different calendar items created, and you can see the due date here. All of this is automatically taken care of by the different agents for you. As we head to the settings page, you can manage your integrations and preferences. We can simply add a variety of different tools over here. For example, Gmail, Google Calendar, and so on. So that's exactly what we are going to build today. The exact same architecture, a similar architecture to OpenClaw, and you can understand how it's built and understand the fundamentals for all of this. Now let's understand the architecture of Exec OS. Exactly how are we going to build this entire application? So first of all, as the user is signed up, we are going to use the Next.js 16 app router, which is the latest and greatest technology to build a specific application. Next.js is a really powerful framework, which is exactly why Exec OS is going to use that. Then we are going to use Clerk for authentication, for middleware, for billing, and so on. So what's going to happen is the minute the user logs in, Clerk auth middleware is going to step in and basically check, can this specific user sign in to this account, sign up, and so on. What services can this user actually access? So obviously sign in and sign up are public pages, so they will easily be able to access it. But then when it comes to running the agents, that is agentic runs over here, an API that we'll be building as well, Clerk auth middleware is going to be responsible for protecting it. So users that don't or shouldn't have access to will not be able to access it. These are the different routes that we have inside of our application. For example, auth routes are sign in and sign up. Main routes are dashboard, monitoring, and settings. We go to dashboard, we have dashboard, monitoring, and settings. Then for the API routes, we'll have a route for agentic run. We will have a API /auth /Google /callback for the Google APIs. And we may have a post API webhooks call as well, although that's totally optional, and we'll get to that in a second. Then you're going to have a public route for the landing page as well as sign in and sign up pages, because those are the routes that are public and should be able to access by anyone. Then when it comes to the core library, we are going to divide it in a few different variations. One, the core library, as in the lib folder, will have separate services for running the agent, for processing the email, for Gmail, as well as calendar. And again, I'm giving you an idea of this entire project architecture, so you should be able to think why we chose the way we chose. And this is one of the requests that a lot of you have made, that can you focus more on the architecture rather than just coding? This way you all will have a good understanding for why we did the way we did things. Then we have the DB folder, where we will have schema, queries, and Drizzle ORM. DB folder will host everything related to the database. That is, we'll have the schema, any sort of queries we need to make, as well as we will be using Drizzle ORM for it. And the reason why we're using Drizzle ORM is because an ORM really helps us to interact with the SQL queries. It does the job of figuring out everything it needs to do to write the most efficient queries. Now, if you ask me, I'm a huge fan of writing raw SQL queries. However, with AI in play, you could totally use an ORM and get that ORM to write SQL queries as well, especially with Drizzle. It's really good at writing efficient queries, which is exactly why you'll be using Drizzle ORM. And you can see the performance between Drizzle as well as Prisma here as well is insane. So that's exactly what we'll be focusing on. Then when it comes to lib/encryption, and anytime we interact with the Google APIs, we need to get the tokens that Google gives us so that we don't need to reconnect our services over and over again. For example, in this specific application, once the user has connected Gmail and Google Calendar, we really don't want to keep asking them for that. So that's exactly what we'll be storing, and the logic for that we'll be storing in encryption.ts. We'll be encrypting the key and making sure we are using this algorithm to decrypt it as well for any type of token security. This way we're not leaking any data. Then comes the fun part, which is lib/AI. We will be using the Vercel AI SDK and Zord schemas to essentially write our entire agentic flow. For example, this is the Vercel AI SDK over here. It's again from the creators of Next.js. And AI, when it comes to writing AI code, or I should say raw AI code, anyone can do it. But using an SDK really gives us the tools we need to ship powerful AI products. What I mean by that is AI SDK gives us this really nice handy interface that we could just simply switch. For example, if you want to generate text, we just need to change this little string here, which is the model and the prompt, and it automatically just tweaks it. It automatically switches the model. It uses the OpenAI model. You could go with the Anthropic model and so on in order for us to build AI applications. The response that we get from AI is honestly the most annoying response. It has a lot of different things that it returns which need to be really parsed to be able to show it to our UI, show it on our UI. And AI SDK makes it a lot simpler for us to do that as well. And that's exactly what we'll be using. Then in utils, we are going to have a bunch of different utils for icons, for chassis and components, and we will be using the package for merging in different class names called as tailwind merge. Again, this is something we'll talk about once we are actually building it. Then when it comes to services, an external layer, and we are actually leaning on a bunch of different services, such as Clerk. And Clerk, honestly, is my favorite for building applications. You can also see on the Next.js course as well, I am in fact using Clerk over here too for my specific platform as well. And there is a reason for that. Again, I sneak this little code here. If you want to use it, totally go for it for 12% off my course. But going back to it, but honestly, Clerk is amazing because it not only just manages the auth, but it's a complete user management solutions. I've been working in industry for over a decade. I have built authentication layers from scratch. Like I tried to manage dot tokens, I encoded, decoded tokens, dealing with the refresh tokens if you want to make sure that the user stays logged in, do it in a safe way, managing all the user data, making sure I'm following all the different compliance requirements. All of this can truly get a lot, which is why I really appreciate services like Clerk. The Clerk is definitely sponsoring this video, but honestly, I'm a huge fan and I'm not going to recommend any sponsor on this channel that I don't personally use or love. So truly, Clerk is awesome. But on top of that, Clerk, another reason why we should all use Clerk, especially when we want to sell things and we want to build a SaaS app, which is exactly what we are doing here. This specific app is something we are going to want to give access to others and sell it, make money from it. And in that case, Clerk is just incredible. Here's why. First of all, now Clerk has a bunch of different components we could use. So you don't have to waste time building the sign up modal, sign in, user button, user profile, wait list, which is another one that's great for SaaS. If you want to sell something, you're not ready yet, you want to check if there's demand for it, you could just add a waitlist component here and start collecting emails. But on top of that, what's really cool is billing. Now, Clerk also allows you to bill your customers, again, by giving you this pricing table component, which you can configure what the different features are going to be. But whether it be trial, monthly billing or annual billing cancellations, credit card theft, all of that, it manages automatically. The webhook setup, let's say a user subscribes from a personal plan, that is a free plan, to a pro plan, even that Clerk manages it automatically. Plus, on top of that, I'm going to show you, it also has handy features. On top of that, it also has these handy features where you could test out your pricing using a test credit card. All of this is all built in, so you don't really need to do anything. I built a couple of products and I'm actually building one in the background right now, and I'm using Clerk for that. And Clerk has taken away all the chaos and nuisance that Stripe was creating in my life. Stripe is amazing, and Clerk billing is in fact built on top of Stripe, but they have added this additional layer that we don't have to deal with those Stripe APIs and all the different webhook, honestly, secrets, and managing all of that was getting really complicated. Clerk manages all of that for us, which is just simply amazing. So that's exactly what we'll be using as well. Plus, on top of that, we will be using Clerk Skills, which basically is a package that gives your AI coding agents specialized knowledge about Clerk. Simply going to add this and then use the skills to tell our agents that, hey, this is how I want you to set it up. So you don't have to learn everything from the ground up. The skills package is going to help us do so. Again, more on that a bit later. So going back to the project architecture, we are going to use Clerk for authentication, billing, subscription management, and webhooks. Then for PostgreSQL, we are going to use Railway. Now, you could also simply deploy your application on Railway as well. You don't necessarily need to just use a specific service, but we are going to use Railway for our Postgres database. So Postgres database is completely for free on Railway. As you can see here, it's already deployed. These are the different tables that we have, and you can dig into it and check exactly what data it is, the different status of the agents, what's the summary, and so on. Plus, you can create amazing backups and so on as well. They'll still be deploying it on Vercel, because Vercel is an incredible platform for deploying your Next.js application, so we'll be sticking to that. However, feel free to deploy things on Railways, and honestly incredible. But in terms of PostgreSQL, we will be storing information about our users, our integrations, our tasks, our agent runs, everything will be stored in the PostgreSQL database. Then for AI, we are going to use Claude. We already talked about using the AI SDK for parsing the AI data and using that and as an additional layer on top, but we'll be using Claude AI and the Sonnet 4 API for that as well. Sonnet Core 4 model for that as well. We are going to use it for email analysis, structured output, and for using Zod to parse the data. So we don't just add gibberish data or have malicious data be added to our database. Then when it comes to APIs, we are going to use Google, Gmail, Calendar, and OAuth. All of this to basically power our autonomous agent. You just have to give access to it once, and once it's done, you don't have to worry about it. That's exactly the architecture we'll be using. Then when it comes to hosting, we will be using Vercel, but we'll also be using cron jobs so that our agents run autonomously without having to make it a manual run each time. So this is the entire architecture. Now, if you're wondering, well, why are we using Claude AI? Why can't we use OpenAI? You can totally do so. If you have a free plan from OpenAI, totally go for it. If you have a free plan from Claude, go for it as well. In fact, there's a video on my YouTube channel where I talk about how you could start using open source models and build as well. I will list down the 3 models that you could use in the description below. If you're going open source, you will need a powerful machine to run those models, so keep that in mind as well. Without further ado, let's start building. So now let's just enter, and here we can call this Exec OS. Let's just go with the recommended defaults, and this is going to mean it's going to install all the dependencies as well as the dev dependencies in our project. We have used bun here, and that's what we'll be using to create the next application. Then let's just cd into the directory and make sure to just simply open this inside of your editor. So we could just do open and open it like that, or just simply open it in Cursor. Now, as our project is open here, let's close all of this. Now I'm going to be using Cursor as our editor. However, feel free to use whatever editors you like. Now, as we dig in here, we have the app router. So that's why we have the app folder in here. If you want an in-depth understanding of how Next.js applications work and how Next.js works in general, then check out this Next.js 16 crash course on my YouTube channel. At the same time, if you want to go deeper and build production-ready apps with Next.js, then check out nextjscourse.dev as well. Alright, so now that we have the Next.js app router, there are only a couple things I'm going to mention here. One, anytime you want to expose a public route, you need to create a file called as page.tsx, because the Next.js app router uses the file-based routing system. Similarly, if you go to layout, that is a file that wraps your entire application. What that means is it has the HTML and body elements. Anything that you want your entire application to have access to is what should be stored in layout. That's why we have fonts in layout, some metadata information, and so on as well. Now that we have this, let's close this window as well, and let's get ShadCN installed. We're gonna go to docs, installation, and you could create a new project with ShadCN UI or just simply pick the framework and copy this. Again, we are going with bun. Over here, let's paste it.
And let's just go with all the defaults. There we go. ChatCN just simply creates a bunch of files that we're gonna need. So if we go back, you're gonna see globals.css has a bunch of different variables that ChatCN uses. And it also has set up some colors for us. Page.tsx did not get impacted, but there's page components.json, which ChatCN uses to map all the files and folders. Then we have a lib directory with utils, and this is the thing I talked about in the project architecture. We have this package called as tailwind merge, which ChatCN uses. So whenever you want to combine a bunch of class names and add if-else conditions for styles, you could simply use the cn function that basically calls TW merge, so you could easily access the class names. And we'll get to an example very soon. Alrighty. Now, let's make sure that our Next.js app is completely set up. Let's head over to the terminal. And now here, let's just run fun dev. This is going to basically pick the port that's available and run our development server. Now, this runs on localhost 3001. This 3000 port is taken, but maybe for you, it is 3000 port. I have something else running on 3000, which is why it picked 3001. Go to the browser and just localhost 3001. And voila, we have our Next.js app ready to go, which is amazing. Let's go to page.tsx and delete everything. Let's make sure that our ChatCN works. So let's just add hello world, remove the unused import, and now we have hello world text on the screen. Let's go to ChatCN UI and install a bunch of components we're gonna need. So we are gonna need card component. In order for us to add that, we just need to use this specific line. Let's head over to the terminal and stop the server and paste this specific line. We're not only gonna need button, but we're gonna need card, badge, progress, input, tabs, avatar, drop-down menu, and so on. Install all these components inside our project. Now, these are all basically files, which is the beauty of ChatCN UI component library. Let's start the server, and now let's go to components folder. Now we have a new UI folder, which has all these different components ready to go, so we could simply just access it. Perfect. Now let's just go here and add button, and this button import comes from ChatCN UI. There we go. Let's import that. And if we go back to localhost 3001, we do get a button component. Amazing. So now ChatCN UI component library works. Let me also give you the exact styles we are going to use throughout the project. We don't need to focus too much on styling and focus more on the OpenClaw architecture I'm going to walk. Now, in order for us to get going with Clerk, first of all, make sure to sign in if you already have an account, or simply sign up. Now make sure to use the link in the description below, or let Clerk know that I sent you, so that I can keep making free content just like this specific video on this channel. Now, the Clerk pricing is completely for free, so you could use their hobby plan and get unlimited applications and all of these features completely for free, and they don't even ask you for your credit card. So you could start building for free and simply go and sign up over here. Since I already have an account, you could also simply just go ahead and sign in. Now, as you can see, the quick start for app router, you could create a new Next.js app, install Clerk, set up Clerk middleware, and so on. Now you could run all of these steps manually, or we could simply use Clerk skills. Now, Clerk skills are essentially installable packages, the skills to help AI coding agents work more effectively with Clerk. And skills in general are amazing because now you don't need to set up everything from the ground up and know exactly what to do. The libraries and the different companies are basically giving exactly what AI needs to know. How can we train AI? How can we give AI more specialized knowledge about our services so that it's easier for us, the developers, to use it? We're going to copy it. And again, it's saying NPX, but we could use bun as well to do so. So let's go here, stop the server, and similar to how we had NPX, we just need bun x. And then we could copy the rest of the command. So here we could say bun x Clerk skills. This is going to install a bunch of different skills. We could pick the skills we want it to install. So I'm going to say we need Clerk setup. We don't need Clerk organizations, but we definitely need Next.js patterns,
If you want to customize Clerk component appearance, we could do so. So let's do that. Then let's add Clerk here as well. You could also get Clerk Pestle. And there we go. Now, this is totally dependent on the app that you are going to use or the agent that you are going to use. In my case, I have Claude Code, so I'm going to get Claude Code Skills. However, you could simply pick whatever AI coding tool you're using. For example, Augment or Kilo or anything else you like, Vincer, whatever you like here. But I'm going to simply pick Claude Code over here. Let's go ahead and install it. This is the project. Let's add a symlink, proceed with the installation. And now let's go back to running our development server. And now if you see, we have a folder called as .claude with skills folder with all the different skills installed. And this is essentially the skills.md file. Same thing here, which has information about everything that the clerk or the agents need to know. Now let's open up Claude Code. If you don't have it, open up whatever agents you want. For example, if you have cursor agent, then you could just simply do agent or whatever. Let's say you're not using AI at all. I would highly recommend you to do so, because in 2026, honestly, if you're not using AI, you are going to be left behind. So make sure you subscribe to at least one of the services to use it. But let's say you don't, then you could also simply just manually get this going as well, because that's exactly what we are going to do. All right. So now we could simply add Clerk. So you can simply do Clerk setup, and this is going to set up Clerk authentication in our project. We'll read the package JSON and then do everything for us. And again, this is exactly the guide that I showed you. The Clerk quick start. So I'm just going to say allow bun for this project, but it's going to get the Clerk Next.js SDK. It automatically picked that I'm using bun. Let's do all. Now it is writing a middleware file. Middleware is in fact deprecated in Next.js 16. So we're going to switch this to make it proxy, but for now it's fine. It just will give us a deprecated warning. And now it's going to update the root layout to have Clerk provider. Just awesome. There we go. So now it has created the middleware, it has the layout and so on. And it has added these components from Clerk, which are signed out, sign in button, sign up button, and so on. So now if we go to localhost 3001, if we refresh it, you can now see hello world with sign in, sign up. And again, it redirects us to this URL on Clerk, which is a dummy URL right now, because we have not actually created an account with Clerk yet. But as you can see, it says here temporary API keys are enabled, so you could get started immediately. And that's exactly what we're doing now. You could simply just configure our application and get going. So let's just call this Exec OS. All right. And then set your environment variable. So I'm going to copy this. Let's go here, not in the root, and add n.local file. Paste these two variables. Done. It automatically detected that we have successfully set it. And then we can resume development. So now your application is fully configured. Isn't that amazing? Now watch what happens if I do sign in. It does take us to a new route, which is fine. Let's just actually go and sign in. And let's just sign in with my account, accept everything, and verify that I'm a human. And there we go. We have a user button now. And this is exactly what I was talking about. With Clerk, automatically all of this is available. We don't need to build any of this. It's just there. If I sign out, we are back to the sign in and sign up links, which is amazing. So Clerk has automatically set up everything for us. Now, if I just do Clerk, and you can see Clerk setup, Clerk custom UI, and so on. Let's just do custom UI for now, because we don't want every time sign in to go to this random URL. We want it to go to /sign-in URL. So now that's exactly what it's going to set up. It's installing the Clerk themes package. It's getting SHATC and CSS import. And let's close this. Applying the SHATC and theme to Clerk provider.
And there we go. So now if we take a look, we have layouts.
It has added a base theme as Chatcn. Now if we refresh the page and go to sign in, it has this nice theme. It's no longer that black
Theme that we had, but it still goes to a different route.
Alright, so now let's just create sign in and sign up routes.
Scroll to the bottom and you can see custom sign in and sign up. Now let's copy this code, and this is what we need. We need this specific file. So let's go here, create a new file and paste it.
Let's copy this code, paste that.
Then let's go to sign up page.
Let's copy this exact thing, go to app directory, new file, paste it. This is create a sign up page. Copy this, go here and paste it. Alright. So now we have a sign in and a sign up page specifically.
So now if we go
here, go to sign in, and then let's go to proxy or middleware in our case, paste the whole thing. And this is where we want to create a route matcher and say is public route. And then if it's not a public route, then protect. Otherwise, these are public routes.
The next thing we need to do is update what route it needs to be. So let's copy this, go to end local file and paste it. And I always like to add a comment called as clerk. This way we can divide it. Similarly, for sign in, it's going to be sign in just like that.
Now if we go to localhost 3001, it automatically redirects us to /signin, which is exactly our page. So this is working exactly how we want it to.
That's amazing. Similarly, if I change this to sign up,
it will take us to sign up. But the minute I go to localhost 3001, it still takes us to sign in.
And here's why. It's because in our middleware,
we need to still say /. This way, / becomes a public route. And now we can go to sign in from here. It takes us to sign in, sign up. It's no longer that dummy URL, and it's in fact our actual URL. So it looks part of our site. Now the next thing we need to do is go to globals.css
and update these styles because we don't need it. So let's copy the whole thing
and paste it.
And then we just need another line, which is this one. The rest, everything else can just go away.
Alright, so now if we refresh the page, there we go. Our application is now by default in dark mode. If I go to sign in or sign up, it in fact matches to exactly what our theme needs to be, which is what Clerk is automatically adopting from our Chatcn variables, which is amazing. So our Clerk model is in fact looking like our design now as a part of our SaaS, which is awesome.
All right. Now if we go to home, then we see hello world with the button click me here. Now, since we're gonna also have other routes, let's create a grouping here. And by simply adding auth in these brackets and moving exactly this folder, we can easily group the routes. Now, when you start moving them, you're going to see that it's sort of scattered. And just move this inside here. There we go. So now we are back to where we started. And if we head to localhost 3001, go to sign in, it still works as expected. Now, this specific modal is not centered. So let's just do that by centering it.
So let's just add a property called as appearance.
Copy this exact same thing. Go to sign up page and add the same here as well. Similarly, let's wrap it up in a div. And let's give it a class name called auth container. Just like that. Now we can do the same in sign in as well. Auth container and then wrap it up here. And there we go. And now you can see, and now it's a bit more centered.
So if I go to sign in or sign up, it's pretty much the same. Now if I go back to home,
it still works.
Now the rest of the routes could actually be in another grouping.
Let's call this main. There we go. And here we can create another page as not home, but in fact, dashboard page.
And this specific dashboard page will have all the information about the dashboard.
And we just need to create a new folder here and add dashboard here and then move page inside it. And now we have a dashboard page.
Now if we go back here and go to /dashboard, it actually takes us to sign in. So our logic works as expected. because we said that dashboard or any other pages other than sign in, sign up, and slash are going to be private pages.
The next thing we need to do is let's update this to be proxy.ts because middleware is in fact deprecated, but everything else stays the same. It doesn't matter. So now if I refresh it, it still works. If I go to slash dashboard, it still takes us to sign in, which is exactly what we want. Beautiful.
Now let's update the layout file to pick the font we want along with some metadata details, and then let's add a footer as well.
Let's go to layout and right underneath the children. We don't need any of this here. We need to move this to the header component, which we do have here. Let's add a footer, and footer is simply just gonna be footer with footer wrapper, section heading, center the text, and then the copyright icon with our name.
You could also just say new date.getFullYear. This way we don't need to update the date every single year. Now if I refresh, you can see that our footer is available
in all the pages. Next, we don't need this font. We in fact need a font called as Montserrat.
So let's get that font. And in order to set up fonts, since we're using Next font, which are all the Google fonts that we can access, we could simply just create a new object and then use it directly.
But just simply
Montserrat.classname. This way this will automatically get applied throughout. Then instead of calling this create next app, let's call this Exec OS, or let's call this AI Executive Assistant. Text will be something like this. Obviously this simplifies it, but feel free to tweak this metadata text to whatever we want.
Now if we go back, our font has changed,
and if we go to our browser developer tools, in the head tag, we now have, first of all, a title, as well as we have a description, which is what we want to. That's amazing. Next, if you notice, the header, in fact, is a bit different inside of our application. For example, this one doesn't have header. It has a sidebar with this logo. But if we go to home, we have this header with the logo, with a dashboard link, and a user button. So let's only update our home page with the header we want, because that's the only place we want that header to be there.
First off, let's add some class name. But before we keep switching back and forth, let's move our window to the right.
So now let's update this div to have a class name of landing wrapper, which will give it its necessary spacing.
Then let's go to layout and move this header from here to page. So let's remove all of this, and let's also bring the imports from layout as well. It's gonna be this, remove the button import, and so on.
Now for the header, let's just say this is gonna be landing header. We'll have another class. Let's call this landing header inner, which will have another class called as logo container, which will have a text for Exec OS as well as a next link component that redirects it back to home. So let's give it a logo text with Exec OS. Then right underneath that, under the link, we will have, if it's sign in, then show the user button. And let's also give it a class name of nav actions, not with the user buttons, but inside nav actions, let's just do make dashboard and a button with a variant of dashboard.
But instead of outline, it's gonna be a ghost button, as you can see here.
And let's move
user button in here as well. Now, when it comes to sign out, let's move all of this right underneath sign in. And inside of sign out, let's also create nav actions with signed out wrapped around it.
Let's remove this.
And now it's automatically on the right hand side.
Now, if we sign in, it's in fact going to have a dashboard with a user button, which is exactly what we want right here. Next, right underneath it, let's give it a section. And this is where the rest of the content is gonna live. For example, we'll have this text and this, the two buttons. We'll have powerful features and a pricing table. Let's take a step back here. Now, this specific page has this pricing table. This pricing table is in fact a pricing table from Clerk. So we could easily just add that. So before we build
our hero section and other features, let's complete the auth cycle here. When the user clicks to, since I'm already logged in, it's giving me automatically a switch to this plan option. Let's say what happens once we do. Automatically pulls up the checkout modal, and all I have to do is subscribe. Isn't that amazing? But this is all powered by the Clerk pricing table. So we could add that here. Then when we head over to dashboard, let me expand this. Bottom left, we show a pro user or not. So we need to show that. And based on that pro status or a free plan status, we need to configure a lot of things. So how about we add that as a infrastructure, and then we could build on top of it. Every section is going to need a section heading and an H2. So let's just call this simple, transparent pricing. Then we are going to add the pricing table from Clerk, which is simply just going to be this. Now, pricing table cannot be rendered when billing is disabled. So for that, we just need to head over to the Clerk dashboard. And as you can see, I have a variety of different applications on Clerk. So I'm definitely a heavy user. But if you click here, this is the app that we set up. And let's go to billing and enable billing. Billing to be enabled and hit save. Go to subscription plans and add a variety of different subscription plans here that will automatically display on the card. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just refresh the page. And now you can see a free plan is automatically displayed. Let's make sure it matches the appearance we want. So let's just do appearance and let's do base theme as dark. Or I guess since base theme is already set, you don't need to worry about it. Let's just see what Clerk gives us first. So now if you go back here, let's add two things. And let's add another plan called as the Pro plan. And let's just do Pro plan. You can add any description you want. And how much would we charge? It is a $19 plan. So let's set $19. If they subscribe to it for an annual discount, then they do get a certain amount as free. So offer subscribers the option to pay annually at this discounted monthly price. So the monthly price would probably be $16, for example. If you want to give them a free trial or not, again, it's as simple as toggling this. And then press save. So now if we go here, you're going to see a pro plan here. Toggle this off, it's $19, otherwise it's $16. Beautiful. All right. So now that we have the two plans, we can add the different features available here too. So if we see our features are unlimited agents run automatically, limited agents manually run agents. So let's just do unlimited agents, created, save. Let's add another feature, run automatically, created, save. And this is the pro plan. Now if we go here and go to the free plan, let's add features here too. We can either check these or just simply create a new feature. It's gonna be limited agents, manually run agents. Limited agents, save this, and then manually run agents. Save this again, and that's it. That's all we need. Going back here, but this one, let's refresh the page, and boom. We have like the two plans here, and all we had to do is update it in the UI, which is amazing. But this plan is active. However, if I want to subscribe to this plan, then we could just use a test credit card here and then pay the yearly amount if you want, as you can see here, and hit continue. Now the pro plan is active, but if I switch it back, let's just subscribe, and now the free plan is active. 2027 because I've already subscribed to the pro plan. Now what's cool is that if you go to users, I'm already available here as a user. If I click on it, you will see my activity and set some metadata information, disable my account, what subscriptions am I subscribed in, and so on. Similarly, my payments, settings too. On top of that, as a user, since I'm already logged in, I could also just go to manage account and then go to billing, which comes as an option. And I could download my statements. I could switch plans automatically as well. As you can see, same table is available. I can go to payments and view more information about my payments, or add a completely new payment method without having to contact the owner of the specific SaaS, which is amazing. It reduces a lot of support tickets as well. All right. So now that we have this, we could go to dashboard and configure dashboard to show if the user is pro or not. So if you go to the dashboard, now we have this sidebar, and no matter
but which page we navigate to dashboard monitoring settings, we still show the specific sidebar. So that sidebar needs to exist for all the sign-in pages. So what we could simply do is inside of main, could just create a new layout.tsx file, and whatever we add in layout will automatically get displayed throughout. So let's refresh it, and now you had nothing displayed here, but if I say hi, it is going to be displayed everywhere. So even if I go to B, this page does not exist, but there will be a hi somewhere over there. Alright, so now first what we need to do is check if the specific user is signed in or not. If it's signed in, then proceed. If not, redirect them to sign in. So check if the user is authenticated. Next, we need to check if not, redirect to login. Otherwise, if show the children. Similarly, whether we need to get the user from DB or create the user. Because it's the first time they're trying to do so, that user might not exist in the DB, so we might need to do that. But this is a step we can do later, because that is where a database connection is going to come in play. Then we can check if the user has paid or not, because if it's a paid user, we want to show pro, otherwise not. Plus, we also want to show a bunch of nav items here too. So all of that can be displayed here. Let's just do it step by step. So here we could say user ID and then another property called as has from auth. Auth comes from Clerk auth, and this would make this as async. If there is no user ID, we are going to use a redirect function to redirect the user to /signin. Now, let's check if the Clerk user is, let's just do current user and call current user from Clerk server. We get the Clerk user from this current user function from Clerk. Then this is where we could get or create the user, for example, and then get their email address and so on too. But what matters here, has the user paid or not? If it's a paid user or not, has is this amazing property where we could just check if the user has a pro plan or not. And this specific property should match to what we set up here. So free user underscore pro plan, very important. So now if the user is a pro user or not. So here we could say if it is a paid user, it says you are a paid user, otherwise you are a free user. So now if I go back to home, I am a paid user because I paid annually for the whole thing, which is amazing. So I'm a paid user and I will have access to this service regardless, even though I switch to a free plan for the next year. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. But before that, let's also create a sidebar here. So let's give it a class name of layout wrapper. Then let's build a sidebar here. We'll have a sidebar container, a div, sidebar inner. For logo, we need logo container that will have logo text with a link that goes back to home, importing it from next link. There we go. Right underneath that, we will have a nav called as sidebar nav, which will have a bunch of options. We could call them nav items, which will be dashboard. Let's just call this home icon, and that home icon comes from this package called as Lucid React. We could simply import it. Then we will have monitoring, goes to the mail icon. Now go to monitoring. Then we'll have settings, which will be the settings icon. There we go. Now we could simply just loop through it, which is right here. That's it. And let's wrap this in a button that comes from button. There we go. Let's move this one div down. There we go. So now we see the 3 routes. Now we are also going to add this code, which says this will be a zap icon, but which says that if it's not a paid user, then show upgrade to pro option. So we'll have a bunch of styles here and unlock autonomous AI agents, and then a button that redirects them to pricing. And lastly, right underneath that we'll have a sidebar section with a user profile and a user button here from Clerk, because that's what we need to do to show at the bottom here. And move this Next.js thing to the top right. And now you can see this button has showed up, and right underneath that we can say if it's a paid user, then show the name, or if it's a paid user, then just show a badge
Class name, BG primary, and to be pro. There we go. A pro user over here. And I believe we can remove this because it's automatic. By default, it's primary. There we go. Now we can remove this text completely, and the children can be in the main content class name. Sweet. And underneath that, let's give it more styles for main content inner as well. There we go.
So now you can see that it's already looking way better. Dashboard text is quite huge. We don't need that. But other than that, everything else looks very nice. Zoomed out a little bit so it's easier to view. But if we go to dashboard page should have a similar logic, right? The layout logic here. Or the fact that because it automatically checks, don't need to check all over again.
You can simply skip that since layout is automatically doing that for us. So inside the dashboard page, just this one, here we'll have a page wrapper. Instead of an H1, let's remove this. We'll have a div, which will have an H1 but with page title and a page description, which will be welcome back. Here's what's happening with your AI. Now you can see this apostrophe thing. We could either just fix it by adding a pause, or we could just go here to ESLint config and just say unescaped entities to be off.
We don't have to escape it.
We could also just reduce the size of the sidebar. So for that, we're gonna go to globals.css, and you can see we have a bunch of sidebar class names, and large could be 64, but otherwise it's just gonna be maybe 24. Similarly, large would be P4, otherwise it's P2. Right there, it's too small, so 40. So going back to dashboard,
They have this page ready to go.
so let's quickly go over the database design. This way we'll understand exactly why we made the decisions of building these tables. So first of all, our app has 4 tables, and here's the thinking behind each. We're going to use users that are automatically going to be synced with Clerk. We are going to use integrations
Which will have encrypted OAuth tokens. Like I mentioned, whenever we connect with
Gmail or calendar, we don't want users to re-authenticate or sign in over and over again, and because that takes away from the autonomous behavior of the agents. Then we have tasks, which will include AI generated action items. So you can think of this as a way to store the different
action items that the AI agents have created. Then are the agent runs,
which is essentially our execution history. What did the agents actually get up to? And this is something that I would recommend
in everything. Because if we are going to give agents the autonomous behavior,
we need to know exactly what they're up to, which is why we need to store them in agent runs. Few things to note here is that we store the full action log as structured JSON, so we can query it later without recreating another table.
access token,
it's in fact encrypted. We never want to store raw OAuth tokens in our database. Then we also store
a field called as created by agent,
which distinguishes AI created tasks from user created ones for future features as well. So whenever you're designing your schema, you want to always think of a step ahead. And for all of this database interaction, we are in fact going to use Drizzle ORM.
Drizzle ORM is amazing as it gives us type-safe database queries with zero runtime overhead. Unlike Prisma, it generates plain SQL and doesn't require a heavy client.
And that's why Drizzle ORM really differentiates from its competitors. So without further ado, now that we understand a bit more about the database structure, we could start creating these tables.
Like, keep this in mind, we could have also stored a lot more things about the agents in the database.
But I believe that you need to only store the information that you truly need and not necessarily bloat your tables with unnecessary information, which is why we have kept the structure lean and we can always add on top as needed.
So let's dive in.
Now let's set up Drizzle and PostgreSQL so we could start storing information and gathering it from the database. So for that,
we're going to scroll down and go to PostgreSQL and copy this, head over to the terminal, stop the server, and
paste it.
Now let's restart the server.
And now over here, we could just initialize the driver. So let's head over to the code, close all the files, and let's create a new directory called as db. In this directory, what we want is a index.ts file, and this file will have a bunch of information. Let's just create a schema file instead.
This is where all our schema will be, and this is where the initialization for our database is going to be, which is going to look like something like this. As you can see, we have these packages that we install, and let's stop the server. We also already have the Postgres one installed, but that's where we're initializing the database. So if there is no database URL, you throw an error, you create a Postgres
connection, and we create a Drizzle instance. Again, passing in the schema. The schema does not exist here, so we need to add it.
So going back to schema, we just need to paste it. And this is the exact schema that we saw. But
I'm going to explain a few things here.
First off, we have the users table, integrations, tasks, and also
some types and agent runs.
Here's what we have done here. We have also created some enums that we can use, such as subscription status could be none, active, cancelled, past due. Integration provider could either be Gmail or Google Calendar, which are a bunch of tools that our agent has access to. Task status could be pending, completed, cancel, and so on. So in the users table, we have all of this information, right? And more importantly, did the agent enable this? Then we have integrations table with all the OR tokens, for instance. Then the task table with all the task information, such as title, description, status, priority, and so on. And lastly, the agent runs table, where it will have all the logs, such as how many emails processed, how many tasks created, drafts created, any error messages, and so on. So we can always investigate by coming here. Then the TypeScript types are in fact inferred from the Drizzle schema, and that's one of the advantages of using Drizzle, because then we could just say type of.infer select and then get the user, infer insert, mean new user, and so on. And I always like to follow this type of convention. Integration or new integration, and infer select would mean that it's going to infer whatever the selection of that table fields are. So all the integration fields would be included in infer select. So you don't need to type it manually, you can just use this directly. Same thing for here as well. Alright, so now that we have the schema going,
let's move on to the next instructions.
So now that we have this, you could just go to get started PostgreSQL. We need the database URL because we don't have it yet. You haven't created a Drizzle config file, so we need to create that. So let's copy that and let's add that in the root. So drizzle.config.ts, and this is where this file will be. And this location will always be where the schema is, so it will be db/schema.ts. Alright, and now we just need to apply the changes to the database, and then that will automatically generate migrations. It will generate the description of our schema and then push it to our database as well. Now here's the thing, we don't have a database URL yet, so let's just head over to Railway. And Railway, again, it's amazing. You could get a bunch of different services here for free, so make sure to sign up to Railway. And then here, let's just go ahead and create our database. So as you can see, we could create something from a GitHub repository, database, empty project, and so on. I'm just going to go ahead and create database and select PostgreSQL. You can select a variety of different databases as well. Alright, it is done now. So we could simply just go to settings. It's still deploying, so let's give it a second. It's attempting to connect to the database. And there we go. We have this database URL. Let's copy that. Have it end the local file. Let's create a Postgres one, create a database URL, and paste what we copy. There we go. Now that we have everything created, let's make sure it's deployed successfully, which is awesome. So now we can simply go here and instead of npx, it should be bunx, and stop the server, and let's just do bunx drizzle-kit push. Now, either connection URL or host database are required for Postgres database direction. So now if we go back here, we have database URL. Now the thing is, we have to tweak one more thing inside of Drizzle to let it pick a .env file, .local file instead of .env file, which is the default. So let's replace it. It's the same thing, except that this is what we need to change.
the schema, out will be DB migrations. There we go. And now this is the main line
to load environment variables from n.local file. Now let's start it again.
And there we go. It has picked up from n.local file and it says that
we are unable to access it. So let's make sure we pick the right URL.
This is the public one which we should pick.
So let's go to n.local file, paste the public URL here. Let's try it one more time and push it. There we go. It's pulling the data schema from the database.
I'm going to push it very soon. Perfect.
So now
if we go to deployments or database and refresh it,
let's go here. You can now see agent runs is a table. Then we have
integrations, which is also a table, tasks, and so on.
So all of this is just readily available for us, which is awesome. So that's exactly what we wanted. So database is ready to go. Now it's completely okay to keep going here to view our information, but I personally really like the Drizzle Kit Studio. The Drizzle Studio is amazing. So we can just install the dependencies here, and then all we need is this, launching it with Drizzle Kit Studio. Since we already have Drizzle Kit Studio, we could just copy this and paste it. And our Drizzle Kit Studio is ready to go. And there we go. We have agent runs, integration, tasks, and users, which is much easier to see.
Now let's start our survey here. Let's just do run. So if you refresh the page, we should get going. We could minimize that.
So if you go back to the dashboard, you're going to see that we have this onboarding card. We have this agent status card, the last agent run, and unread emails. In this specific SaaS application,
I could show you all how you can build the UI part of it for sure, which I'm going to. What's interesting is this agent stuff. Like, how do you run autonomously, right? So let's build this first, and then we can build the rest of the content.
So let's first understand how the run agent button works, because it's quite powerful. And after understanding that, that's pretty much your SaaS app entirely. So as the user is on the dashboard page and they click on run agent button, we disable the button and we show a spinner. And then we invoke behind the scenes a post API calls for run API agent over here. This post request is mainly responsible for making sure that the input that we received and the output is exactly what we want. This is the post API that actually executes the function and what we're going to see next. So that specific function, that API call, this is what it does. First of all, it checks if the Clerk session is valid or not. If not, it unauthorizes it. It redirects to sign it. This is something we've seen before. That's the exact same logic we're going to apply here. Then we're going to insert in the agents run table, status is running. Because remember, we want to log everything. Then we want to decrypt the OR tokens. Now, this is going to keep in mind that you have already logged into Google, because we made the connections for Gmail as well as for Google Calendar before the agent can actually fetch that information and do something with it. So for that, we are going to store the tokens. And we are going to go through an encryption and a decryption process. And I've mentioned this before, but I'm going to explain it one more time. Here's why. Because for the agents to run autonomously, they cannot keep giving us permissions. We need to store the tokens, but if storing the OR token that Google gives us is very risky, so we need to encrypt it and then decrypt it as well. So we're going to do that. Then we are going to use that token to fetch the user's Gmail unread emails and also any calendar events as well in the past 24 hours. Now you can tweak this based on how you would like it, but this is a setting that I personally really like. And then we are going to call the Claude API using the Versa AI SDK to then invoke this specific function generate object and give it some instructions, a prompt. It's going to execute it, and once it does, it's going to then insert tasks in the database, create any Gmail drafts and calendar events, all within our system. Then if any errors occur, it's going to update the status to be agent run status failed. But if not, then it's going to say it's completed, with including any summary as well. And then it's going to just return success is true and the summary. And then the UI updates what happens, such as the button will get re-enabled, new run appears in the list, and maybe a toast saying agent run complete. And that's exactly what run agent function does. And in order to get through this, in order to work on this, we need to first make sure that we have the tools connected, which is Gmail as well as Google Calendar. In order for us to do that, we need to first implement we need to configure Google APIs. This way we could set it up. So first of all, let's go ahead and do that. So first of all, we need to configure our Google APIs, and this is a one-time setup. For that, we need to create a Google Cloud project. So let's call this Exec OS main. Select an organization, and again, just follow this step by step. So a project is getting created. Next, we need to essentially enable the APIs. Now I have two projects here. So let's just select Exec OS main, and then let's enable the Gmail API, because this is an API that our agent will need. And then let's go here, refresh the page, select Exec OS main or whatever you call your project, and then enable the calendar API. There we go. Enable both APIs as your agents definitely need them. Then we need to configure the OAuth screen. And for this, let's just get started and create an app. Let's call this Exec OS. Support email will be this email. Then for now, let's just say available to any test user with a Google account, because we want to submit the app in the future to production, and then they will verify it. Alright, contact information. And this is just gonna be my email address. Alright, so now I'm gonna agree to it and continue, and let's press create. We need to do this in order for us to configure our consent screen. Now, let's create a OAuth client here, and it's gonna be a web application. Let's call this Exec OS OAuth. Then this is where you want to give it our localhost 3000. Later on, we want to change it to something else. And the redirect URI is going to be, and this again would be localhost 3000, and remove the HTTPS. And let's press create. Now the OAuth client has been created. Let's copy this and let's go to test users. Has been limited to test users. This is on the OAuth consent screen. Alright, and this is the thing. Copy the client ID. So let's go here and add Google client ID will be this. We have the Google client ID, but we also need the secret. So let's just copy the secret and let's add it to Google client secret. And this is just going to be this value. Perfect. So let's add that here. There's one more thing we need to do, which is that when you click on this and go to API and services, go to credentials, which is that data access, we need to add these scopes. We need to add scopes and literally look for googleapis.com/auth/gmail .read only. This is a scope we need to add. Then whatever we need as a scope, we need to add it to this. I guess we have not added that yet. So let's do this and update. Modify read only. And we also need the ability to compose a new email. So let's add that. Update. Then for calendar as well, we need calendar read only. Just gonna be this. And then calendar events as well. So let's copy this and calendar events. Just like that. And update. So we have updated all of this, and let's just press save. Then when it comes to testing, we can publish the app whenever we want. But for test users, let's just add whatever email you're going to use to log in. So I'm going to add this dummy email address I have. So let's just press save and make sure to use your email address here. So once you're done with everything, the testing, you can just go ahead and publish the app. I'm not going to, but you could totally do so in the future once you're done. So now our Gmail, Google is already configured. So now let's integrate it into our application. So now, whenever anyone presses dashboard, let's sign in there. This way we have two users that we can play with. Alright, so now if we go to dashboard, you're going to see this upgrade to Pro prompt, right? Which is what we set up. And if I click on Gmail, it takes me to setting. But if I click on connect, then it should take me to another URL that helps me connect my Gmail account. And they're going to ask them a bunch of permissions. That's the consent screen that we just configured.
So first of all, we need a new page called as the settings page. So let's call this the settings, and then let's call this page.tsr, and let's
Create the setting page here.
now again, the dashboard page and the setting page are going to be very similar. So let's copy this and paste it, and let's call this settings page. This will be settings,
And then this will be
manage your account or manage your integrations and preferences. Alright, and then what we do is you just have to loop through a bunch of integrations to display it on the page.
So we have two providers, right? One of the providers
Is in fact Google, which will have a key of Google, name to be Gmail. Actually, not Google, but in fact it will be Gmail.
then description to be connected,
Or I guess description can be
read and
manage your emails. Icon will be the mail icon from Lucid React. And integration would be a Gmail integration.
for now leave this as is. Similarly, we have a Google Calendar one with the calendar icon.
And this one would be view and manage your calendar event.
So now this is the first time in the project
We are going to use a card component. The card component comes from Shadcn UI,
and it will have a bunch of information. Now we're not going to necessarily
build the entire UI. I'm just going to give you the code for it. And let's just import card header, card title, card description, and the badge icon, button. We don't have the disconnect button yet, but let's just do that. You don't need a default variant here.
and let's just say true for now.
Alrighty. So now, if we go back to settings, we're going to have the settings page, settings text with two things, Gmail as well as Google Calendar. And again, we're just rendering two cards here and looping through them. And this is the badge for connected. But if I say false here, it will show a connect button.
So if we press connect Gmail and let's say we log in with this specific account, for example, you're going to get Google hasn't verified this app, and that's because I haven't submitted publicly to get approved by Google.
So let's just say continue for now.
You're probably going to see like a bunch of checkboxes. There's services that we have specifically asked
Are Google to have access to, for example, viewing our email messages, managing drafts and sending emails, viewing and editing events, see and download any calendar, and so on. We need that. This way, we'll be able to access our users' information. So let's press continue.
and then now Gmail has been successfully connected. Now someone can disconnect it and then reconnect it and so on. Same thing for calendar as well. But that's the flow we want to build. This specific button needs to call /API/auth/Google, and that's the API we essentially need to build. And we need to say, okay, provider key is in fact
Gmail or it's Google Calendar. And based on that, we are going to first check the user information,
get the provider, and then generate the token and so on.
So we looked at this before,
wherein we want to decrypt the token, generate the token first of all, then store it in a cookie for validation, and then create another route that will handle the callback. Now, if you remember, when we set up our app here, we did in fact set up this callback URL. And this is the callback URL that we need to handle as well. So what it does is when Google redirects
back here with an auth code, we exchange it for tokens and save them.
and then we can validate the state, parse which provider this is for, exchange the tokens, and then create the token. This way we will have access throughout.
And that's the moment the integration gets created.
Both tokens are encrypted before hitting the database and so on. So that's what we want to build now. So let's go to app and let's create a new API folder here. This API folder will have another folder called as auth, and that specific one
We'll have a folder called as Google, which will have a route.ts. Then inside the auth as well, we'll have a callback folder, but in Google, you're gonna have a callback folder, which will also have another route, and the whole thing will be mapped out easily.
So here's what we want to do. Over here, let's just create a simple API request, which is a GET request.
And the request from the browser is in fact extended by Next.js with Next request.
The first step is verify auth. Second step is to get the provider from the request. Third step is generate the CSRF token. Then we have
Storing the state in HTTP only cookie for validation. We just redirect. That's what we want to do here. On the other hand, in the callback, we are going to have a
GET request as well, extended by next server.
get the cookies, verify auth,
The code from the query params, validate the CSRF state,
parse the provider from the state, exchange the code for a token,
encrypt the token, store the token in the database. Then you want a clear state cookie,
and then redirect back to the settings page.
Now this is just very important, both of these steps, because without this, again, like I said,
we won't be able to really have that autonomous state. So let's implement this first. So for verifying the auth, we are going to have user ID, get the user ID from Clerk server. If there is no user ID, we want to handle it a bit differently. We want to return a next response
here, and instead of calling JSON, we need to call redirect. Let's import next response from next server. With redirect, let's just say we want to redirect to this sign-in page. If there's no user ID, there is no point. Then to get the provider, you want to get next request next URL dot search params dot get
provider. Here's, let's call this provider instead of search params.
If there is no provider, or there is no Gmail or Google Calendar in the provider,
then we want to return
not a redirect, but instead
a next response .json to be error invalid provider.
Now, the next step is for us to generate the token. And the way we can do that is by
using buffer
dot from
JSON stringify it.
Now, in JSON stringify, you want to say nonce, random UUID, and pass in the provider with base 64. Now, crypto is something we need to add.
So let's just do crypto from crypto.
Alright, so now that we have generated the token, we need to store the state in a cookie. So let's just do cookie store equals await cookies. Cookies can come from next headers, and then we simply need to set it. So you can say set
Google OAuth state with state, and then pass in HTTP cookie,
secure, and same side as lax, and so on. And the max age is going to be 10 minutes. We want this cookie to be alive for 10 minutes. That's the cookie store. And lastly, we just want to get the auth URL and the auth URL, we can call a get auth URL function with provider and state. Now this specific function doesn't exist.
However, inside of lib, let's create this file, google.ts. Now this file doesn't exist yet for all of you, so make sure to copy it. And I'm going to walk you through it.
But before that, let's install this package called as Google APIs.
We're going to bun install Google APIs. There we go.
Restart the server. For getting the auth URL, we need to get the OAuth client, which will basically call a new instance of OAuth 2. We pass in the Google ID secret, which we already set earlier, Google Client ID with secret for our app, so that's important. And we say this is going to be the callback URL. And then we generate that auth URL there. If it's a Gmail, these are the different scopes that we set.
If it's Google Calendar, these are the scopes, because that's the only access we need.
Casted here, and then return next response or redirect auth URL. Perfect. And the next thing is callback.
So we need to handle the callback now that we have the GET request.
We need to get the cookies, which we can simply run cookie store is cookies. Let's import that.
We want to wrap this whole thing in a try-catch block. So let's add a try block and a catch block.
Get next response, move everything else into the try block. First of all, we need to make sure we are verifying the auth. And again, we could do that by getting auth from Clerk server. Then we want to parse the code. We could do that by simply doing this, which is to get the search params, get the code from it, state an error. And if there's an error, then return that. If there's no code or state, then redirect the user to a settings page saying error has missing params. Then we want to validate the state. For that, we want to just get the cookie store value, Google OAuth state. And then if it doesn't exist, just handle that. Again, error would be invalid state. The next thing is to parse the provider from the state. So we could simply just use the buffer API to do so and import Google provider type, exchange the token, and create the OAuth client here. So this time we're going to get the token, and then if it doesn't exist, then we want to redirect. Next, we want to make sure we also look up the internal user as well. So that's one step we need to do, because we want to make sure that this specific user is valid. So we need to call a function called as getUserByClerkID. But let's hold off on that for now. Insert and encrypt the user, and for that we can call the encrypt API. We'll get to that in a second. Store the token in the database, and then lastly, clear the cookie and redirect. These two steps. Clear the cookie and then redirect. And in case of an error in the catch block, we simply just wanna return that, and we can just remove this line. So we are console logging it, we are deleting the cookie because there's an error, and we are redirecting the user with error as callback_failed. Alrighty, so now we have done a lot here, but there's one more step remaining, which is that we need to look up internal user, encrypt the token, and actually store in the database, because without that, we won't be able to have that autonomous behavior. So let's create the database calls now and get the user by Clerk ID. Now let's go to the DB folder and let's create a new file. Let's call it queries. And this is where we will store all our database queries. So first of all, we want to import DB that we have from lib/db. I believe we have DB here in the same file. So that's what we need to do. So let's go to queries and let's just do /. There we go. Now we want to create a getUserByClerkID, and let's create our query here. So first we need to get the user, which is just what we called .select. Let's give it an equal sign here from our users table, and users table can easily be imported from the schema, and we could just simply call the where clause as well, just like that. If Drizzle also gives us handy like EQ functions that are really cool as well. And then we can set the limit to 1. Return user or null, for example. So this is our function to get the user by Clerk ID. But if you remember, like we never worked on any logic to create our user in the database either. Like that's something we need to do as well. So if we head to layout, this is where we added a comment here, right? We want to get the user from the DB or create the user. So let's call user equals awaits create user, and this will have a Clerk user ID and email as well. This doesn't exist yet. We need to create that, so let's just do that. So we will have a Clerk user, which will be a string, an email that will be a string, and a name that's optional. And this is where we can check if it's an existing user. Just call this function that we created, getUserByClerkID. So if existing, then it's simple, right? Return existing. But if it's not existing, then we want to create it. So we can say await db.insert users.values, and then we can do Clerk ID, email, name. If it doesn't exist, then it's null, and we need to assign name as well. And then the first one would be Clerk ID over here, Clerk ID. There we go. And then simply return the user. Perfect. So that's exactly what we need to call here in layout. Port it. We just simply need to say email will be this, and then Clerk ID will simply be this user ID over here. And let's add a empty string here. Similarly,
For the name, it will be full name, which we can pass here as well.
Perfect. Now we're simply creating it. We really don't care about the response of the user over here. We're just simply creating that. All right. So I know we're moving around a lot, but there are so many moving pieces to this application, but it's all going to make sense now. So going back here, we want to get the user a Clerk ID, and then let's uncomment this. If there's no user, then we redirect with the error user not found. Again, all of this is something we can handle on the front end. Then we want to call another function. Let's call this upsert integration and store that in the database. So user ID will be user.id. Then you want to pass in the provider access token. This is where we need to encrypt. Token over here. Refresh token will be refresh token. New date would be expiry date.now plus this one. If there is an expiry date, then if there is no expiry date, then this will be the date. And we have token scope. We're going to split it. And for encryption, we just need to encrypt the token. Now, this specific encrypt function doesn't exist, but I'm going to give you a file that you can grab from the GitHub as well, called as encryption.ts. And this file will allow us to encrypt the token, and then we can decrypt it as well. So here we need to encrypt it. So let's import that. Let's implement upsert integration. So we can go back to queries, and here simply we want to just get the integration and then insert it if it doesn't exist. So we can say function upsert, and let's do data. User ID is string, provider is Google provider, access token, refresh token, date, and string array. Then here we check existing equals await get integration. This function doesn't exist yet, but we need to pass in their user ID and data dot provider. If there is an existing one, then we want to update it. And integrations is the table we want this to happen in, and then return it. But let's say it does not exist, and we want to insert it. So let's just call this result db.insert integrations dot values with data and return that. But in returning, we don't want to return everything. Let's just return integrations.id, and let's just do result.id here. There we go. Now for getting the integration, it's pretty similar, right? We have calling a select from integration where integration.user ID is user ID and integration.provider is provider. We limit it by 1 and then we return the integration. So now here we could simply import it. Perfect. We have also encrypted a token and stored it in the database as well. Well, we have done a lot, so let's make sure everything else works. So if we go back to localhost, let's press connect. And once we do, it says that access is blocked. Why is that? Well, let's take a look. The redirect URI is undefined. API or Google callback. So let's see over here. You said it's gonna be 3000. It needs to be 3001. So let's save that. Let's refresh the page. And I guess we'll have to go back and let's connect it again. The other thing we need to also keep in mind is if we go to end local file, one, we need an encryption key over here. Second, we also need to set in next public app URL to be localhost 3001. Now, if your app is running on localhost 3000, then this value needs to be 3000, whatever the port is. So this is what you mean. So now let's connect it, and there we go. So if I select a user, and you can see that access is denied because we have limited our user to just this user. So if we go ahead, Google hasn't verified the app, so let's just continue. We know this message. Let's give permissions for everything. This is what we need to see if that's working. Boom. It looks like it worked. So now if we go here, go to the browser developer console, go to application, go to cookies, and we can verify this by going to the database, users. We do have my user here. Integrations, there is a Gmail integration here as well, which is exactly what we want. And it's connected
to my user, which is awesome.
And if we go to Google OAuth state, because that's the cookie we created, it won't exist because it only lasts for a few seconds. Remember that. So now let's keep this open and do the same with Google Calendar. Let's select my user and let's continue. Select all, continue. And I'm pretty sure it got disconnected again.
But we have our database to verify now, so let's just refresh it. And now we have two integrations, which is the Google Calendar with access token as well as refresh token, which is exactly what we are looking for. So it all is working correctly. That's amazing.
The more you build these type of flows, you're going to get a better understanding of what
exactly you need to do. But at this time, just follow along just to make sure everything works. You can pause the video as well and revisit everything that I've taught so far. But if we go back here, this is what we have done. Like we have now encrypted the token. We still need to build the run agent function and build the API route, check if the Clerk session is valid, update the status is running, and now that the token has been created, we can also decrypt the token, make sure it's a valid token, and then do the rest of this as well. But before we get to that, you may notice here that it still shows connect. It should now show connected as a status. So let's build that now.
To make an API call here, we need to basically get all the user integrations. So right above this, let's do user integrations equals await get user integrations, and we need to pass in user.id over here. User is something we can get from user ID, clerk ID equals await auth. We've done this before. Since this is a server component, we can simply just call it. If there is no clerk ID, we can just redirect it to sign in. We've done this before as well. Now you can also just get clerk user equals await current user, and then something we did before, create the user
and get user integrations. We can pass in the user ID, for example. Now let's go to queries, and here let's add get user integration, for instance. And honestly, it just needs to be everything. Return the results. So now we can just import that. Here we can say Gmail integration is user integration.find. Integration provider is Gmail. And for Google Calendar, it's Google Calendar. And here instead of false, it needs to be provider dot integration. Here it will be Gmail integration, and here it will be Google Calendar integration that we just got. So now you can see we get this icon, which is not the right icon actually, but you get the idea. Because I believe we're using badge from Lucid React, but instead it needs to be badge from Chatsy and UI component library. Now it says connected, both of these, which is amazing. So going back to dashboard, we have connected Gmail, we have connected Google Calendar. We still need to make sure to subscribe to Activate Agent, but let's focus on the actual run agent functionality. So now let's just add a run agent button here on the page. So let's close all of this, head back to our dashboard page, and here we just say welcome back, here's what's happening, but we want to add like a run agent button. So because it's a button, it will have a click handler, which is why we need to wrap this in a client component. So let's just call this run agent button, and this specific button could in fact live inside components. We can just create a folder called as agents, and here we can run agent button.tsx. Let's add that. Let's just do run agent over there. There we go. So now let's just import it from components agents, and it's a very simple button. So we have the button on the screen here. All right, but now this button is going to do a few things, right? It will have a handle run agent function, which should run the actual agent. So this is something we need to execute. Then when someone presses the button, we want to show like some sort of a loader. Let's set the class name to w4, and we need a variant to be outline. But we also need a loader, right? So after setting the on-click handler here, we can just say disable needs to be if it's pending or something. Now, the best way to implement this is by creating a start transition with is pending, and then wrap our agent call in here.
As straightforward as that.
So this automatically hooks our agent. When it's pending, it's true, otherwise it's not. And when it's pending, we just want to show loader to icon from Lucid React. And honestly, we want it to spin. So let's just call it the spinner icon class thing.
This, like loader icon.
And we can say running agent. Otherwise, just run agent now button. There we go. So now, the minute we add start transition, we also need to make this a client component, which is what it's complaining about. So now this is the run agent button. If I press it, you can see
there's a little flicker, right? And that's because we're not doing anything in our button here.
We need to do something. So first of all, this would be wrapped in
A try catch block, right? Something like this. We can just console log the error
and simply return. To update it automatically, we also need to just use a router,
use router
from Next.js, and we automatically just refresh it. So here we can say router.refresh. When automatically the data will get updated after the agent is done running things. If you don't want to use router.refresh, there are other approaches that we could use to do it.
But then in this case, it's as simple as router.refresh, because again, this agent is going to run autonomously.
We're not going to really press this button. It's going to just automatically run. So let's not worry too much about the UI right now. Alright, so now over here, we will have a response, and we will invoke a fetch request, which will be a method post. And then based on the response, we'll console log the data.
Here we can, for the error as well, we can say agent run error to be error. And if response is not okay, we also want to just do console.error agent run failed with results.n. I guess you could do this after data.l, or is the result over here and then call this result. This is way better. Alright, so now this API does not exist, so we definitely need to invoke that or instance. So let's do that now.
I don't really need a return here. So in order for us to create the API, we need to again go to the API folder and create a new folder called as agent, create a new folder called as run, and then in here let's create a new file called as route.ts. This is not going to be a get, it's in fact a post request. You better keep that in mind. And that's it.
Now here's the thing.
Remember we talked about this specific flow is what we are building. We have disabled the button, the spinner has been shown, we are going to invoke a post request. So this is what we need to do. Check for a valid Clerk session, insert agent runs table, a status of running, decrypt the token, fetch Gmail and calendar stuff like unread emails, fetch calendar events, and then invoke Claude based on that. So Claude can be more responsive, or I guess Anthropic APIs, right? Insert in the task database any task that the AI has created, any errors, update the agent runs table to be status as complete with summary, return a success of 200 and button gets re-enabled. So that's exactly what we need to do now. First of all, I'm going to give you a file. It's called that file Google Client. It has a bunch of information. We just need to fix this.
And these functions allow us to get all the Gmail client, Google client, and all that. I'm giving this to you so that we can focus more on the actual functionality of invoking the APIs or how this entire thing is going to run autonomously. So in this post request, as usual, let's write it out exactly what we're going to do. First of all is auth. Make sure that is authenticated. But also this specific post request is going to have two jobs at this point. Job number one is manual run, which means whenever someone presses run agent now. But job number two is auto run the job. That means some sort of a cron job. The cron job part is something we will implement a bit later, but for now, let's just focus on making sure that when it's not a cron job, what exactly are we going to do? So the first step is, if it's not a cron job, we could just say is cron, and let's just say process.n. We're going to need some sort of a secret for the cron job. So, whoops, not that. We're going to add process.n.secret. For example, for now, this obviously does not exist, so it will always be false. And this is where we can say, okay, if it's not a cron job, then what do we do here? That is where we can verify the auth. Then we get the clerk user by ID, right? Then we basically execute the run agent function and just return next response, which is gonna be imported from next server.json, right? That's gonna be what we're gonna do. And if it is a cron job, then it's a completely different process. If it is a cron job, it's gonna be cron triggered, right? Then in that case, we want to do something else. For example, we probably want to say maybe for now, cron job agent run successful or something like that. So let's focus on this right now and execute it. So in auth, we've done this before. So let's just get user ID, which is clerk ID, await auth. Auth comes from clerk Next.js server. If there is no clerk ID, then let's just do unauthorized. Then right here, let's just get the clerk user. Let's import that from our queries because we already have that code. And then let's just run agent. Now run agent does not exist, but which is where inside of lib, we can create agent.ts. We'll then execute that over there. So we can say import it from here. All right. And whatever result that comes from it, we can just return it as a next response.json. All right. So this is what we're going to do in the post request. So we could actually try it out. If I do run agent, running the agent, there is an issue because actually right after this, we also need if user is not agent enabled, then you want to return a 403 as well. So now let's dismiss this and rerun, refresh the page one more time, run the agent, and we get an issue saying doc type is not a valid JSON. It's a GET request, but instead we need a POST request. So if we go back here to the run agent button, we just need to make sure method is POST. Let's run the agent and we get this error. It says 404. Okay, so this needs to be agents. Now if I run this again, there we go. We do get a response and done. Okay, so now our agent is running successfully over here. So now we could pretty much just start building the function. All right, so in the run agent function, as usual, let's add the steps we are going to take. First of all, this whole thing needs to be in a try catch block. So we need to add that. What we need to do is update the agent, right? So create agent run by user ID. First of all, so that means we need to update the table, the logging table that we have to say, okay, this specific agent actually ran. Number two, we need to get the Gmail client just to see if there are any unread emails. So we need to fetch unread emails so our agent can start performing its tasks. Then we need to fetch calendar events if connected, right? There's an if for everything here. Then once the agent is done connecting and fetching calendar events, the next step would be to process each email with AI. That's where the magic happens now. Once Claude is able to do it, then we could create a Gmail draft if reply is needed, and we need AI for that to let us know. Then we are going to again create calendar events as well. If again needed, then we'll mark the email as read because it's done processing it. This way we'll see a draft and then we'll aggregate the results. Lastly, we will log complete agent run, this completed agent run, and return the result. It's going to be the last step. Alright, so the first step is to create agent run by user ID. Let's just do agent run equals await create agent run with a user ID here. We already have the user ID from run agent function, so we could simply just use it. And let's go to DB queries, and this is where we could start creating our queries. For example, we just need to import agent runs from the table and then insert it.
And in terms of values, it's going to be user ID and then status is running.
Now let's just go ahead and import that. So this is pretty much good to go. And then we can start getting the Gmail client. Now, like I mentioned, I have already given you the file for getting the Gmail client. So it gets the Google client here, which is this specific function. What it essentially does is creates the OAuth client and it decrypts it, sets the credentials for the OAuth client, and then checks expiry, updates it, and so on. And if the token was revoked, it will also remove the integration. That is very handy for us, so we're gonna use that. Now, if there is no Gmail client though, then we want to do something else. We want to simply just complete the agent run, right? Which will be, again, we're logging it, right? We want to log it every single time. So we can say complete agent run with agent ID. And then this additional object, which will have status as failed, summary as Gmail
Not connected. Then we have actions
log as empty, emails processed 0, task created 0, drafts created 0, error message is
Gmail integration not found or token expired. We don't need started at, we just need duration. And duration is just gonna be date.now.
And we need like a start time for the agent, which we can access throughout. So here we can say start time is date.now.
Now, inside of the queries, here we are gonna
Add a complete agent run, which is simply going to update it. So it would be, again, const run
equals updates, always returning, and then return
run over here. Now we're updating the agents run table. What we want to do here is simply spread the data that we get, but also add a completed
at, which is gonna be new date.
There we go. That's it. Agent runs .id should match agent run ID because this specific agent was already created before. We are only updating it simply. This can be optional here. And now if we go back to our run agent function, we're simply importing it with complete agent run. So now we can return run ID is run.id. Status is success. I guess as a constant. Status will be fail because it failed. And then summary is Gmail not connected. That's it. Perfect. So now far we have created the agent, basically logged it, got the Gmail client. If it did not work, we logged it again. So we want to get the unread emails as well now. So the third step is that. So let's just do emails equals await fetch unread email. Gmail, fetch. This actually will be the Gmail client. Now, fetch unread emails does not exist, but we need to create it.
Now, fetch unread emails or fetching calendar
events are all Google APIs. And I'm going to give you a couple of files here, which is calendar and Gmail. Let's just create a new folder called as agents and then move Gmail as well as calendar in there. And then let's import that from agents. Here's what that file does. It fetches the unread emails using the Google API, the list function. Then it parses through the messages and runs a promise.all to parse every email. Similarly, to parse the Gmail message, it checks the headers, it gets the headers, it parses the payload data, truncates long emails to stay within token limits, and then returns the message. And this API marks the email as read. This will create a new draft and so on. Same thing for calendar too. It will fetch the upcoming events. It lists the calendar events. Then this one creates the calendar events and so on. So that's exactly what we're doing here. It fetches the unread emails. Then if email.length is 0, then we want to log it as well. So here we're going to say complete agent run agent.id. Status is success. And here we're going to say status is success. Summary is no read emails to process. Action logs is empty. Email process 0. All of this stays the same. And return is just going to be run.id success. Summary as no unread emails to process. And that's it. Similarly, for fetching calendar events if connected. We want to again get the calendar client, which will be this. I can get that from the calendar client. If no calendar client, same idea. Let's just say if there is a calendar client, then do certain things. So we can basically add another package block here. In the try block, we can simply just get the upcoming event. So upcoming events equals await fetch upcoming events. Import that because we already have that. And if there is an error, we don't want to break the whole thing. We can just say calendar fetch failed with a non-fatal message and an error. Alrighty. Now you want to process each email with Claude, for example. So first of all, we want each email that we get over here, all the unread emails, to parse by Claude one by one. So here's what we can do. We can simply create a actions log, which will be a action log entry array. Then we can say const results equal await and use a promise.all settled to loop through all the emails, essentially. Something like that. So this actions log. We don't need another actions log. Okay. So now, as we map through the email, let's create a analysis where we would call analyze email. Pass the email as well as the upcoming event. Now here's the thing. Upcoming events need to be declared outside. So let's just do that and remove this constant from here. So analyze email does not exist. Now all of this needs to happen in here. Create calendar events, mark the email as read, so on. So before we proceed, let's focus on analyzing the email. What exactly are we going to do there? So first of all, that's going to be a separate function altogether. We can just call this process email.ts. Let's call this analyze with AI. All right. So first of all, we need like a model, right? The model is going to be Anthropic's model, which will be Claude Sonnet 4 20250514. If you use like an older model, it will be cheaper, but if you use the latest model, it's always going to be expensive. But before we do, we need to install the AI package. So let's go here and install the AI package. So let's just do AI. Let's restart the server, and now let's get the AI package from here. So we can say import, and I believe we also need the AI SDK as well. So let's just go there and see we need AI and this one AI, and we could just use the model directly. So let's comment this out and let's do generate text from AI, and we also need the AI SDK from Anthropic. Alternatively, like they showed here, we need const result equals await generate text. The model will be Claude Sonnet 4. I just use that. Then we need a system prompt, and also a output. An output is basically a specification for parsing structured outputs from the LLM responses. So we definitely need that. We need the schema that we need to parse as well. The schema is going to be email analysis schema. We still need to create this, and we can comment this out for now. So for the schema, it's actually going to be, we'll be using Zod for that. So let's also install Zod here. Let's stop the server and install Zod. There we go. So now I'm going to give you the exact schema that we are going to use, which is going to be this. You don't need to export this one, just declare it. So Zod will make sure that the schema actually matches this exact structure. Zod won't even let or return anything, or the AI won't, if it doesn't match this specific structure. We need summary, we need priority, we need these action items, we need a needs reply or not, a draft reply, a bunch of calendar events. So we are giving strict instructions to AI to create that for us. So that's exactly what output is gonna do. In here, we can just get output. It's to be capital, and over here, we can just do output.
Now, in terms of the
Prompt itself, I'm going to give that to you because it's quite long to write it, but we will go over everything in depth. The prompt is going to be this. Now, if you think about it, we need to fill in the details, but we are saying, asking AI, you are an AI assistant analyzing emails. Today's date is today. Analyze the following email, extract the action items from it, right? We need all of this information. So we need to still fill the rest of the details. So what we could do is, let's remove this line. And now let's just create calendar context is empty and check if there are any upcoming events that we need to worry about. So let's just get that. Any type of upcoming events and map it. So here, if we say if it's more than 0, then we can call this events list equals upcoming events dot map event, which will be E, and then we just need to extract and give it a specific summary. It's gonna look pretty much like this, wherein we are mapping through it, we are asking it to give summary, start, and so on. And then calendar context is gonna be upcoming calendar event and use this for analysis. So this is a calendar context we are passing in as well. Then let's set the date for today. So here we can say today will be today's date and we have an extra comma. There we go. So this is the prompt. Essentially, the AI package and Zod is going to enforce a lot of the strict constraints for us, so we don't have to worry about a lot of it. Now, let's call analyze with AI here. For example, once we analyze with AI, we could then feed in the analysis in the next step, such as, like I said, we can also just create tasks from action items, which is something we missed here as well. So we have the analysis, but every single email is just also created as well. So for this, we could say it's going to be email tasks created will be 0. Let's keep a counter. And then let's loop through analysis dot action items that we get back and then store that in the database. So we can go through a for loop and say const item of analysis or action items and simply just run create task with a bunch of information such as user ID. We need title to be item dot title, description to be description, priority, item dot priority, due date will be item dot due date, or new date with item dot due date, created by agent is true, and plus. Now, let's make sure that the type of this is a promise with email analysis. And towards the end, we just want to return result dot output, which we forgot to return. So now we get analysis or action items. You're also going to see if I check, we have calendar events, category, and all of this was defined in Zod. So it's automatically typed as well. So now if we go to queries, we just need to insert and create a task in the database. And this one needs to be analysis.priority. Now let's go to queries. Here, let's just create the task, import that from schema, and insert that. What create task is pretty much going to just be this function, wherein we insert it inside the task table with all these different values. Again, we've done this before. So now we could simply import create task in here. Alrighty, so now we have analyzed with AI, we have created the task, and again, we don't need to assign it because it's an action, we don't need to get the response from it. Now we could create the Gmail draft as well. Again, we already have the API, right? So we could simply do this. Draft created is false. If it needs a reply and it needs a draft reply, then let's create a draft with a Gmail client. Similarly, for calendar events as well, if the calendar is connected, we need to do something similar. So something like that, wherein check if AI analysis has given us calendar events. If so, create the calendar event. Perfect. And lastly, we just need to mark the email as read, or I guess marked as read, and import that as well. Then return everything.
You want to return
Email ID, subject, and everything. So like subject, from, date, success, analysis or summary, priority, category, needs reply, draft reply, all of that needs to be inserted.
you don't need error here, and so on.
Alrighty. But if that's not the case, then we also need to return an error for an error as well. So we can just simply return all of this, the status as error, and error to be something like this.
Alright, so now we have done a lot. There are a bunch of steps that we have taken, but soon we'll see all the results come through.
Now let's aggregate all the results because we again need to store that in the database as well. For example, if we go to Drizzle Studio over here, inside of our tasks, we need all this information. But in agent runs, we also need
All of this information too, like we've done before.
So based on the table data, you just need to insert that and aggregate how many tasks were created, how many things were added, and so on. So now in terms of aggregation, let's just do for const result of results. And then if
Results is fulfilled, then that's to entry equals result.value,
action log.push entry, and if entry.status is success, then that's where we do the aggregation. For example, total task created, and so on. And remove this for now. Now, total task created and all that, I don't believe we created any counter for that, so we need to.
right underneath that we could just create it. There we go. Let's remove total errors.
This one we can say 1 or 0. Add all the details.
Perfect. And
Then we also need to check how many successes were there, how many errors, so we need success count. Again, we're simply like logging it. We also need error count. We don't need all of this information. Error count. Then we need like overall status as well. So like if success count is more than 0, success, otherwise failed. And we also need like a summary as well. And that summary itself is going to be something like this. Again, it's like we're logging it. So like process, success count, emails, total task created. Like we're just creating like a good sentence for us to show us how many events were created, how many drafts were created, what's the error count, and so on. After all of this is done, we could simply just do run and log the event. So we can say complete agent run, agent run.id, and then status to be overall status. So we need action log here, success count, task created would be total task created, drafts created will be total drafts created, error message will be something like this. We can be smarter than that. Here we can say if it's greater than 0, then add error count, now fail to process or undefined. And lastly, just return the result. It's just gonna be run ID, status would be overall status, I guess. And summary is just gonna be summary that we created. Perfect. And you can remove this. We don't need it. To remove this, but right here, we can say agent run.id, or we also need to log it in the catch too. So let's do this. And here, let's do run.id. Status is failed. And summary can just be the error message. It will be something like this. It's either error.message or a unknown error.
let's see where agent run is.
So this way everyone can access it. Alrighty, so we have done a lot, but we have gone through this step by step, right? Like just to go over it, we checked for valid sessions, we updated the status to running, decrypted the tokens, fetched the APIs, used Claude, but instead of using generate object, generate text, we executed by inserting tasks in the database, logged every step of the way, and returned the status. That's exactly what we want, right? So let's test it out. Let's see exactly what this gives us. We have a button on the UI. Let's press run. It's running, and we'll find out soon enough if everything works as expected. It did run, which is beautiful. Did run. So let's open up the
Drizzle Studio.
and it was successful. No
unread emails to process. So here's what we can do. From my phone, I'm going to email my dummy email address, and then we can basically see exactly how it processes it. Go to my latest email. You're going to see the old email, but you can see this new email that was just received, right? So now let's see exactly how that's going to work. Let's see if it actually processes the emails or not. So if we go back and run the agent, if everything looks as expected, we should see a new draft here. And it should also mark the email as read. Agent has run successfully. And you go to Drizzle Studio. Let's see what happens. There is an action log. One email failed to process. Okay, so at least it's logging it so we know. Process 0 emails, 1 error. So let's figure out what's going on. Subject is high, and this is the email. So if we go to the terminal, we have not really set up our AI key at all, right? The AI Gateway API key environment variable needs to be set in here. So we could just go back to the AI Gateway API key, and we could simply just get the API key. Now, with the Vercel AI SDK, the advantage is that it's a provider that connects you to from multiple AI providers to a single interface. And we could simply just call it. So how about we get the API key here? So let's just choose a unique name, and we can say Exec OS API key, create the key, copy it, go to end local file, and for AI, let's just do AI Gateway API key and paste the key. Now copy this, go back and paste it. All right. Now if we don't want to use the AI Gateway, and we could also just simply directly use the model as well, which is another option for us to do. But let's just use the AI Gateway for now. So running the agent, and let's see what's going on. Found one unread email. Still running, which is a good sign. It created a bunch of calendar events, which is amazing. And it stopped running. So if everything works as expected, we should see this email being processed. And look at that. We do have a draft from AI. Thanks for the update. I'll review it by Wednesday. I have the client presentation, blah, blah, blah. Let me know if you need anything else. That's amazing. And it has addressed it correctly as well. So it is successfully creating the draft too, which is awesome. Now, this is pretty sweet. Alternatively, if we just go to the calendar, we do see this specific calendar, but we do have these 3 events created as well, which is awesome. So we don't have to worry about it. AI is doing everything. So like Q1 budget. So like if we see Q1 budget shared by Wednesday, that will be in March. So that's based on when I'm recording it. This is Friday. So let's do a sync call as well. Q1 budget. It's actually a day off. If you see, this is March, and it needs to create a event for Wednesday and not Thursday. And it has created those events as well, which is pretty amazing. So our autonomous AI agent is ready to go, which is amazing. Now, if you take a look, when you run this button, if it's successful or not, we don't really see it on the page. We really need to see more information like we have here. We have to build this agent status card. We need a last agent card, unread emails, all of this too. So let's go ahead and build that now. So let's just go to the dashboard page. And here is where we need the card for agent status. Let's just get all these cards and agent status here. This would be subscribe to run, activate the autonomous agent. They already see it's coming along, right? Then the agent button needs to be probably in the footer. Get that. So let's also add another div wrapper here, which is gonna be stats grid 2. And wrap this whole thing. Then for the title, let's give it a card title with icon. Right above that, let's add a zap icon with class name of sidebar icon. And then in the description, subscribe to activate the autonomous agent. Then we are going to also have a card content here. which will be checking,
which will have a class name of cart content spec.
underneath that would be
Status row, then a span with status
with a badge icon. Actually, no, not a badge icon, it will be a badge. You don't need a badge icon here, a badge, class name, or just a badge with called ready.
Then another status row,
Status label as Gmail, then span of connected. You can move this button underneath that. We don't need a separate footer here.
So this is the agent that we have, which is the agent status. Now it's the last agent run. Very similar, right? Like it does have the same style, so we can pretty much just copy it.
Copy that, paste it, and in this case, instead of agent status, it will be last agent run. Remove this app icon. This will literally have no class name.
This will be something like latest run,
Then most recent activity,
or no runs yet. I'm just gonna say this is gonna be true for now.
Then in terms of the card content, we can pretty much remove this
Whole thing inside the cart content, and then in here we'll give it a class name of cart content stack sm with a div,
and add an array of label, time,
value,
to be latest run dot started at, otherwise new date.
Latest run does not exist yet. We need to fetch that data. The next value is gonna be status and then summary.
There we go. And then this is just gonna be item node label, stat row, stat label, stat value, exactly what we had earlier. Perfect. Now let's just
Get the information about the latest run so it's all gonna make sense. So here we can say latest run equals await get latest agent run
and fasten user.id. Our dashboard needs to be an async function, and we also need to fetch the user as well,
along with the fact that if it's a paid user or not.
so we can pretty much get all of this, move that here, port everything that we got. So now we have the user information.
Then now we can just write the specific query. So if we go back to queries,
Let's write
get the latest run, which again will come from agent runs. As you saw, we were feeding everything inside our table. So let's just import that.
There we go. So now everything else is fixed. So if we go back here, whoops, forgot to import something. Get that from the queries. Beautiful.
There we go. Alrighty. So obviously we need to fix the styling, but as you can see, it is giving exactly what we want. It created 4 tasks, drafted 1 reply, created 3 calendar events, right? Which is exactly what we want. So let's fix the styling now.
Status row. And if we can see here, latest run would mean most recent activity, otherwise not. And the card header needs to close in here. Similarly, card header needs to close here. Just like that. Fact.
This one is still feeling like it's too close, so let's fix that.
Alright,
Let's give it a gap of 2, maybe 4, just to give it a little bit more space. There we go. So now it's looking better. Otherwise, it's just like this.
perfect.
Well, now it's looking very nice.
Our agent. Obviously, we need to fix the top part, which will get fixed after we add
Onboarding over here. Looking very good in terms of space, but we still have all the data necessary. So how about this? Let's just build this right now.
check if the user's onboarding is actually completed or not. Or like just checked if
They have actually connected their Gmails by getting the user integrations, right? So that's what we're going to do now, wherein we get the user integrations and see, okay, what exactly we need to show them. So
get integrations. We already have a query for that.
check Gmail and Google Calendar, right? If it's actually connected.
Gmail, let's call this connected, or
Google Calendar connected, right? And then create an
array of onboarding steps here, which is gonna be name, will be connect Gmail. Completed will be Gmail connected. Let's just do some.
Once someone clicks on it, will be a settings page. Same thing here as well. The last step is going to be
subscribe to activate agent.
Completed will be something like this. Now, this will totally depend if the user is a paid user or not. And we've done this before, right? How do we get the paid user? We could just simply get it from Clerk.
From auth automatically. Doesn't need to be await.
Does the user have a pro plan or not? Based on that, we show them
in onboarding. So the completed count will be
onboarding steps.filter, step.completed, right? And .length. But we also show a progress bar, which will just be a basic math. So we could just do math.round and completed count divided by this times 100. Now, we just need to show onboarding completed here. Let's not spend more time building the UI. I'm going to give you the actual code for it because it's literally the same card component, right? What we're going to need here. So we're simply mapping through the onboarding steps and displaying it. So now if we go back here, progress is something we need to add from Patsy and UI. We have all these 3 steps connected because this is in fact a pro user. If I do log out, sign in with the other user, which is not a pro user, and let's see what happens.
Let's go to dashboard.
And if you take a look, welcome back, here's what's happening. All of these 3 are not connected and it says 0 of 3 steps completed, which is amazing. That's exactly what we needed to happen. So we can just sign out, go back to sign in and go back into the pro account again.
Because that's what we need right now. Alrighty.
So this is done. And for quick stats, we'll do something similar. I'm going to give you the code for it all the way at the bottom.
Just need a pending task count here, for example. So if you go back to dashboard,
these are all the different items here, right? We just need to fill it. So let's create a query here for get unread emails and all that. So let's just go to queries and you go to our schema,
agent runs.
So let's just get emails. Now for these 2, let's comment it out. And then if we take a look at our schema, we can show tasks created, drafts created, and so on. So we can tweak this a bit. We can say drafts created.
Let's remove this link component. We totally don't need it.
But eventually, if you want this to link to other pages, you could totally do so as well. All right. So now if we go back to our query, you not only can select emails process, we could get all 3 of them. Email process, draft created, task created, something like that. So now just do that. And here we could simply add the rest. Now we have the updated information here as well, which is amazing. So our dashboard is looking very nice.
You haven't built the monitoring page, so let's do that now.
So monitoring page doesn't exist right now. So let's just go to main, create a new folder,
go to monitoring, create a new page and call this page.tsx.
Let's create a monitoring page. And now we do have monitoring here. Now keep this in mind, when we go to monitoring page, here's what happens, right? We want to show these things, which we already show on the dashboard, and also how many emails have been processed.
We don't show that here because we never ran it, but in our case, we really need to show it. Let's log out of this user and go back into the pro account. Go. If I go to monitoring,
you can already see process, high priority, drafts created, tasks extracted. When you click on this, you can see exactly all the action items to review, action items with drafts reply. So you basically get a log, right, of everything in the dashboard. That's exactly what we're going to build now. So just like we have the other pages like dashboard or settings, let's just also create a thing for monitoring as well. We go monitoring and the text is going to be this. So our monitoring page is looking very good already because it exists now. Then we have these wherein when you click on it, it expands, right? Obviously, we're using Shadcn UI components for that. And these are just card components that we're going to use. Now I'm going to basically give you the markup. This way we can focus on the actual backend of it. We already have this query in the dashboard, right? Pretty much just get the whole thing here and delete the code we don't need. So get that. We don't need onboarding. Don't need this either. No user integration and so on. Let's make this a async function. Let's import the things we need. All right. Let's import card as well with card title. And here we have processed and then the number. So let's just say emails processed. Man, we just don't need everything. Email processed with the mail icon. I kind of like what we have here better than this one. So as you can see, we just added this and replaced the code and then assign a bunch of constants here. So now let's write the code for it. Now we can get literally process emails by flattening the actions logs entries across the runs into a single list and then getting information about how many emails were processed, drafts were created, total tasks, and so on. So let's do that. So first of all, we need to write a query for runs, which will be await get agent runs. Do we have that? Not yet. So let's go to queries and create a agent runs query. So we get it from the agents run table as long as the user ID matches and add a limit of 20, for example. In the monitoring page, let's import it. And here we need to flatten it. So we can say processed emails equals an array for const runs of runs. Const log equals runs, get the action log from run, or make it an empty array. Go through another for loop with entries in it of log. And here we can say if entry.email ID, then process emails.push. And here let's just do entry. Process that will be run act. There we go. So high priority will be process emails.filter high. Total tasks be just a reduce function which does the math for you. Total process will be process emails.length, and that's it. So that's exactly what we want. So if we go back here, this is the data. Perfect. So it created all this information already. Now, these are basically all the process emails that we just got. So I'm going to give you the component inside of components and probably agents, call it email detail. Now, this doesn't exist. That's fine. Let's fix this import here. But let's just do this for now over here. But in this case, essentially, we're creating this card that's beautiful and also expanding it, which opens up action items as well as other things. I really want to focus on the backend part and the architecture part in this specific course, which is why I'm trying to make sure I give you all the necessary markup. Okay, so now right underneath, we could do stats space y3 and then go through process emails and call email detail right here. So if we go back here and go down, you can already see the two emails that were processed. For instance, one is marked as high and other was just a high. And you just need to make sure that the key is proper. We can do last index. There we go. Something like that. So now, as you can see here, we are not seeing any action items or drafted replies for this email, even though there were drafts. That means we clearly missed adding it to the database. So here's the fix for that. If we go to agent, we really need to add that to our, when we complete the agent run, we want to log it here. So we definitely missed a value, action items to be action items. Second, we also need to add the remaining like entry.draft reply and so on as well, which is why it's in fact missing. So if you run it again, I'm sure it's going to work fine. Basically, that's the summary of the page. Then the second thing is I also removed a bunch of code we don't need. This is something we don't need.
And total drafts need to come from process emails, and we fix that just like this over here. All right. So our page is looking very nice. We just need to fix the spacing between elements, as you can see. So if we go to dashboard, let's just do class name space y3. And now there is some spacing between all of them. Go to dashboard here. There's more spacing, so let's add 4. Then let's also wrap one of the divs in here. There we go. So our spacing is now finally fixed. Perfect. So as you can see, a run agent now button works, and monitoring also shows all the latest data as well, which is exactly what we want. Now, the last part is to get our autonomous behavior working, which is to get the cron job working. The cool thing about the autonomous behavior of this specific agent is that we could say we want it to run every minute, every 15 minutes. We could have also done it in a way where we listen to webhooks and only run the agent and only run the agent then. But here's the truth, like this also pretty much works if you want to save money as well, because you don't want things to be running all the time. This is a very good model too, because every 15 minutes it's just going to check. So in order for us to implement it, we're going to use cron jobs from using Vercel, because it has that. Remember, we set this cron secret over here, and now we also need to get the cron secret from request.headers.get, and here we could just call this authorization. Then request comes from next request. For example, we set the cron secret, and like we said, if it's not a cron job, then it's gonna do this. So it's manual run. Otherwise, it's gonna be an automated run, right? So this one is a manual run, and this one is an automated run, right? So that's exactly what we want to do here. So for cron secret, we need to set that in like our environment variables, and this cron secret could be anything, right? Like create any value that you want. Make sure it's unique enough that no one can guess. Create a gibberish value, in fact, and once you do, set the cron secret here. Now this agent, when you set that environment variable, is going to run autonomously the minute you have this value and you set the header for authorization. So here we can say if it's cron, if it's a secret, and cron secret equals, and here we can say better to be this. Now, if it's not a cron, do that. Otherwise, if it's a cron triggered event, then we could do something else over here, just like that. So here we could get eligible users for which we need to be running the cron job. So we could call get agent eligible users, then loop through those. And here we could get user ID of eligible users, run the agent with that user ID. And once that's done, once we run it, we could just push it in results, which we can store in this array. So we could say push user ID, status is success, and result. Then that's it. And then response is just going to be results. And then process is going to be results.length. That's all we need. Now we just need to write this specific function, which can go inside of queries. Basically get users with agent enable, like whenever they have that, that's all we need. And now let's import that. That's all we need to do to run this autonomously. That's it. There's this run agent function is going to run, but it's only going to run whenever it gets all the users and agent eligible user, basically. So we can change it to be something like this, wherein we select it and then do an inner join on integrations as well, because again, we not only want it to be true, but we also want it to be the provider to be Gmail. That's another thing we care about. Definitely something we need to tweak over here. Well, there's this error here we need to fix, which is in the dashboard page, because we are pretty much wrapping up our project. It's looking very good. We just need to deploy it to test the cron functionality, and everything else should work exactly how we want it to. So tasks created is right here, and we never gave it a key.
So let's go ahead and deploy our application. So for that, let's just head over to GitHub and let's create a brand new repository here. And let's call this Exec OS OpenClaw. Set it to public and create the repository. We need to create a GitHub repository and push it. So let's copy these lines because we already have a GitHub repository. When you create a new Next.js project with create next tab, it automatically creates a Git repo. So let's head over to the terminal, stop the server, and I've been committing all the changes, so we could just simply do this. Our changes have now been deployed, so if I refresh the page, it all works. So now let's head over to Vercel and add a new project. Now, this project that I created, this is in fact, we can import it. In terms of environment variables, we want to get all the environment variables from here and add it. But there are a couple things we need to tweak. First of all, Clerk ID, these two, need to be for a production instance, not for a development one. Second, this now points to localhost 3001. That's not the case. Our domain will most likely be https://vercel.app. So that's what we need to tweak. The other thing we also need to do is go to our project, the Google project, which is Exec OS. And here let's add another URI to be basically https://vercel.app. We need that. Similarly, for callback, it's going to be similar and something like that. Now let's hit save. This is very important for you to do because without this, it's not going to work. Gmail will stop working. So we have implemented all of this. The other thing we need to also do is change this cron secret value. It's something that you can guess. Let's head over to the terminal and let's just do auth secret. This will run this specific package and also generate a secret that we could use. So it's running now. There we go. We can copy this secret now and go here and set it. Very important for us to do. Now, let's just go ahead and deploy our application. Now, provided the URL that we set, Exec OS OpenClaw vercel.app, hopefully it's good, it's in production. We also need to change the encryption key, but you could do the same thing with the exact same approach that I showed you. Make sure you do so. Alrighty. The other thing we are also going to do is while that build runs, let's also run bun build or bun run build. This will create an optimized production build, and this is exactly the command that Vercel is also going to run for us when we deploy our application. So if there are any issues, we can catch it and create a new build and create a new commit. So let's do that right now. Looks like it all worked perfectly, so we shouldn't have any problems, but we'll find out very soon. Alrighty, so it's still deploying. Let's go back. Deployments, it's building right now. So if you take a look, not at logs, but the build logs, this is literally running next build, which creates an optimized production build. Perfect. While that's happening, let's go to cron jobs. Inside of settings, they have been enabled, and we need to add a cron job to our, we already have a serverless function for the project. And now we just need to add this as well. So this will specifically run our cron job every X seconds. And this is exactly what we did, which is that it will prevent unauthorized access by adding the cron secret environment variable and check for incoming requests. So anytime there's a request with this specific cron secret is only when the invocation will happen. Otherwise, not really. So we need to create a vercel.json and get the cron jobs going. So vercel.json and set that. And I want this to be every 15 minutes. So this is going to be agent run, and this is for every 15 minutes. So now let's push this. Let's also push this key error that we had. So let's just say cron jobs set up commit. And go ahead and push it. All right. So now if we go back, our app is ready to go, which is amazing. Since we haven't really changed Clerk's for the page, just have this pricing table here. We still need to build the landing page as one last step, but we'll do that next. But as you can see right here, we have the billing. So let's just go ahead and sign in. Because we didn't really switch our development credentials, we could simply just log into it my Gmail ID and it should still work. The fact that this even works is a good thing because we have been able to simply just use it. Now, if I go to connect Gmail, it's already connected, right? Because it's the same credentials. Now let's try that with another ID. Let's go to sign in and go to this other email address that I have and let's continue. Now, if we go to dashboard, this is a free plan right now. It's connect Gmail. Gmail is not connected. This will be a good test for us to see everything works. And it does, which is amazing. This is what we want. If you get a unauthorized error, that means you need to change the callback URL like I showed you in the Google Console project. Now let's just use this as an email address. This is still gonna show up because we still need to submit our app in the Google Console as well. So like we need to submit it. We need to submit it to do so. So let's just continue. And amazing, it has been connected successfully. Now in the meantime, we can also just look for cron jobs here. And we could simply run this every 15 minutes or run it manually right now. So it has not run yet, but in every 15 minutes, it's going to. So now if we go to Vercel, go to dashboard, since Gmail has been connected, let's run the agent now just to make sure it's a manual run and it works. If everything works, we should see something in monitoring. But there are no emails to process. It did process one email. So let's go to monitoring. And this is the email. New device signed into your Exec OS account, which is the email that I received on my email address. And these are the action items, which is awesome. So it was able to create the two tasks, process the email, and everything is working as expected. So one last step is for us to check the cron jobs. They have been configured now, and look at that. It just ran as well. So it's working perfectly, which is amazing. So that's a wrap on this specific project. I really hope you enjoyed it and learned a lot from it. If you want more content just like this one, then check out this Next.js 16 crash course that I have created, or check out this other project where we build and deploy a production-ready application. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.